Hello, my name's Solon, and we're going to be talking about how to perform an accident investigation. So, the first step to an accident is what is an accident? What are we talking about here? An accident is an unplanned, unwanted, and usually preventable event that may result in injury to people, lost production, lost customers, and/or damage to property. So, let's think about that. Um, an accident is not planned. No one came to work today going, I hope I run myself over with a car. And that does happen, by the way. So when we react to an accident, we need to be reacting with concern and providing support and not with anger and frustration. Um, they didn't plan to do this and they're not happy they did this. So we don't need to add stress to the situation. Um, Also, it was usually preventable. Most accidents are very preventable. And I'll talk about that in a moment. And then the losses. The losses from an accident are never just the little bit of money you might see in replacing a broken piece of equipment. And I say a little bit of money, you might think of, 5 or 10,000 or more dollars is not a little bit of money. But when you look at medical costs, when you look at potential lawsuits, lost production, customers that you lost because you can't fulfill an order now, um, it makes the property damage fairly minimal compared to the other expenses that can come from an accident. So we don't want accidents. They cost a lot in many different ways, including injury, which is the worst. Um, and we're going to try and investigate them and prevent them from occurring again. So, what causes an accident? Studies show that the vast majority of accidents are caused by human error. Um, things do break, that happens, but often they break because we didn't inspect things like we were supposed to. Acts of nature do happen. A hurricane is for real, or a tornado is for real. Earthquakes happen. Um, But the vast majority of accidents, 90+%, are caused by someone doing something wrong or not doing what they were supposed to do or what they were trained to do, or they weren't trained in the first place, that kind of thing. It's very tempting after something goes wrong to just blame the employees involved because that's probably the truth. But if you do that, quite often you're going to miss the cause of an accident. And it's going to happen again. As an example, an employee falls and hurts himself after climbing top of a rolling office chair. Now, obviously, they hurt themselves. They stood on something that was unstable, that rolls, it pivots, it's padded, so there's no stable floor here. This was obviously an employee hurting themselves. I don't need to investigate this accident at all. Are we sure? Why did they choose to do it? They know it's stupid. So, were there step ladders available? Do staff know where the ladders are? Are there enough ladders for the volume of work that's needed? Or, does someone have it and now I can't get to it and I need to get my job done? Um, do they go high enough or low enough? Maybe it's too big a tool for the area that this person was working in. Were staff trained on what the proper way to get to that material was? Um, you look at it like that, you start realizing, well, wait a minute, they really didn't have an option. I told them to get this job done and they just did it despite the obvious safety hazards because they were too afraid to ask, how do I get this down? They didn't train me on this, so they must assume I can figure it out. If we don't train staff and ask them to be creative in getting the job done, that's a recipe for an accident. So we need to investigate all accidents to make sure we're not missing a problem that will just hurt more people and cause more loss. If we fix the core problem, we could avoid future equipment costs, medical costs, lost productivity, and lawsuits. And like I said, these costs often dwarf the fix that you need to do. So uh, when we see a problem, we want to fix it before an accident ever happens. If we can get that fix done, we're avoiding so much cost in so many terms. It's very much worth our while. The problem is it takes time, and flat out, most people don't want to take the time to do something other than their direct job. So, what is the purpose of the accident investigation? As I discussed above, the purpose is to find the root cause of the accident. Why did this accident really happen? Was it an employee that didn't follow training? By the way, that's normally the case. Um, but it could have been poor equipment, the wrong size equipment. They weren't trained in the specific task. So maybe it's our whole onboarding process. Um, was there insufficient equipment? There's whole lists of possible causes for an accident. And what we want to drill down to in our accident investigation is if we had done what, whatever specific thing that could have impacted this, would it have stopped this accident from happening? That's what we really want to do. We do not want to uh, do a disciplinary investigation while doing our accident investigation. The problem is if you start writing that kind of stuff down, um, then it's going to color your view of what caused the accident. So we need to keep just an eye on what caused the accident. The HR discipline side is a separate thing. Do not write anything down during your accident investigation about discipline, because if everyone ever comes to review what you did, um, it's going to make it look like you had a predetermined outcome for your accident investigation. Now, we don't just investigate accidents, we also investigate something called near misses. A near miss is where an accident almost happens, like when a forklift almost hits someone going around a corner. Now, nothing happened, no one got hurt. So we need to be training people to look for things that are going wrong in our work environments. Um, if you don't train them on alerting us to these dangerous issues, then the first time you hear about it is when the accident happens instead of us preventing it from ever happening. Things to think about is, when someone tells you something bad just happened, well, how many times has this happened? Well, what could we have done to prevent it? Ask the person bringing you the information. Sometimes that worker actually knows how to fix the problem, and they already have a thought in their head, and we need to pull it out. Could a mirror placed in the right spot have stopped this? How about stop signs, designated travel paths? Or maybe it's a procedural change, like, okay, foot traffic is no longer going to go this way. Foot traffic is always going to go a different way. Or maybe we move the mobile traffic, the equipment. Um, so near misses are critical for keeping our work environments safe. So we really need to communicate with our staff. One of the hardest problems in accident investigations is to find out there was an accident. I've lost count of the number of times employees have told me about an injury that occurred months ago. And they're only telling me now because it really hurts and it just won't go away. So why don't they tell us? Well, most people don't want to bring up bad news to their boss. Maybe they screwed up and they don't want to face the consequences of their actions. Maybe they're embarrassed. Maybe they don't want to report on another employee. There's lots of reasons why people don't tell us things. So we need to foster a friendly environment of open communication. You have to be their ally in safety. Everyone needs to feel free of fear and responsible for the safety of their coworkers and themselves. So we really hear what's going on in the work environment, because whatever you see going on in front of you, 10 times worse is when you're away. So we really need to, hear from them. Um, do consider an anonymous Dropbox. That way, employees who screwed up can report it and no one gets hurt, because that equipment's still broken. If they don't report it, the equipment's still broken. So we need to know that it's broken so we can fix it, because it's going to hurt somebody else. Um, we also need a Dropbox because people don't want to be the one who rats out one of their coworkers. And if there's an anonymous Dropbox, no one knows who reported something, and you can still hear the information and react to the problem and fix it. So who should conduct the investigation? You heard about an accident. Who should be the one conducting the accident investigation? Usually the best person is their direct supervisor. The supervisor for a given area should know the work being done very well, and they'll be in the best position to know how it should have been done, what went wrong based on what they're seeing. Um, so that's really usually the best person to conduct the investigation. Often supervisors will conduct the investigation with other team members, such as maintenance, safety, human resources, or other departments that have specific knowledge of the problem or the work environment. Maybe they'll call in an engineer for a technical opinion. Uh, If there is any suspicion that the immediate supervisor may be biased or not the best person for this task, then another management team member may be assigned to the task. And sometimes that there's been an issue between two employees and the supervisor is one of those employees. You really want to consider having that someone else do the accident investigation because it's going to color the accident investigation with their past history. Now, when do you investigate an accident? As soon as possible. We want to see the scene as it was. People are going to be very tempted to start cleaning up right away, and it's going to change the scene. So you're not going to see if someone's moved stuff, what actually happened. So, accident happens, you hear about it, you go look at it. That's as fast as you want to go. Um, Staff should be trained to report the issues immediately and then to isolate the area. Um, if you need emergency response or there's a safety issue, then you'll have to train them on what you're going to do as much as they can to address those issues, um, but still leave the scene to a certain extent that so you can see it. If there's a traffic control issue, we're going to have to address that. So maybe we'll have to push everything out of the way. It's a tough one when you have safety and emergency response issues in your accident scene, but it's quite normal. So what are the steps to do the accident investigation? First, we're going to interview any affected or injured workers at the scene of the accident and walk them through a reenactment. So if someone's really injured and they're going off to the ambulance, obviously we're not interviewing them right now. We'll do that one later. But anyone who was a witness, if it's safe, walk them through the area and say what happened. We want to do those interviews individually and privately. Um, the problem is if you do a group interview, sometimes their memories commingle and one person's now convinced what they thought they saw isn't what really happened because someone else said something else. So we want all those individual stories. And then after we got all those individual interviews, then we can combine all the statements and go, well, where do they agree and where do they disagree on what happened? Then we can do a group interview. Um, Everyone who has knowledge of the accident should be interviewed. Sometimes the person, even far away, has a critical piece of information that they saw that no one else did. As I said, interviews as a group may be conducted after the individual interviews, but that's just to resolve the inconsistencies between statements. You may want to do signed statements because sometimes we have staff that are transient between locations or at a given job site, and we may not see them again. They could be here for the next week and then moving on. So, or someone who goes to the hospital, it's a bad injury, they quit, they don't come back to work. A signed statement is going to be the only way we have to show what they thought happened. And if there ever is like legal issues coming from something, an OSHA investigation, OSHA citations, lawsuits, you're going to wish you had that signed statements from that person. Always consider doing whatever you think is necessary to document the scene. Maybe I want to draw something out. Maybe I want to go grab the emergency floor plan off the wall and start sketching what happened. Maybe I want to do photos. Document whatever you think is needed. And remember, this is your only chance to get a shot of the scene as it happened. Because as soon as it's cleaned up, it's never going to be the same again. And you're never going to have that evidence to prove one allegation versus another. So you're going to get a good idea of what happened, how it could have been prevented, just as you do these few first steps. Then you're going to start documenting what will be done to prevent similar accidents in the future. And to a certain extent, you're going to need more time to come up with a list of action items. But some of the things are going to be fairly obvious, and you'll be able to write down an action plan fairly quickly on some of the easy parts. One thing to remember is sometimes something actually did break. A third-party product, something we bought to do the job, a piece of equipment breaks. We want pictures of that. We want it saved. We don't want it thrown away because maybe you can go back after the manufacturer for the cost of the investigation, the injury, the new equipment, because their thing broke when it shouldn't have. but you're not going to be able to do that kind of legal proceeding if you don't have the evidence and the thing that broke. We do want to develop standardized accident investigation forms for all this. Do you see that long list of information we just asked for? Um, so if you're just writing down on a piece of paper and trying to cover all that, you're going to forget things. So a form is always the way to go because it's going to remind you of steps in the accident investigation procedure. And that way you'll actually cover everything. In a time of stress, we forget to ask questions. It's normal. If you're looking for accident investigation form, most forms, most things regarding safety, don't create your own. You could waste time creating your own. Go online and just type in accident investigation form, and you're going to see a bunch pop up on your search. Go through. Is there one you like, one you don't like? Does this one have some stuff and the other one has some stuff? You want to combine them? There'll be things that someone else's previous work is going to just highlight that you didn't think about, and it's going to make life so much easier. So you either combine some forms together or you copy someone else's form and make it your own form. Put your headers and stuff on it, your distribution tree on it, so everyone gets a copy that needs to. But that's the easiest and best way, because if you make your own, I guarantee you're going to forget to put something on it. So part of a classic accident investigation at the tail end is, what are we going to do to stop this from ever happening again? You've had to deal with this accident once. I don't want to deal with it again, right? So we find the root cause of the accident. A lot of times the action plan will be in stages. What are we going to do right now, today, to stop someone from getting hurt? Are we going to put signs around it? Are we going to put cones around it, tape it off? Are we going to lock out an area? Are we going to start training some people that we found out weren't trained on a task? Provide some on-the-spot training right now? Do we need to rent equipment, fencing? What are we going to do right now today so that no one else gets hurt? Then, what are we going to do forever to stop this from being an issue? Are we going to need an entirely new piece of equipment, which is going to cost a ton of money, and they have to make it before it even comes here, so it's going to take a ton of time for it to get here. That could take months, years to get a permanent fix. So a lot of times we do have a tiered response of what we did today, what we're going to do by next week, and what the permanent fix is going to be after we've really got a plan finalized with all the departments that'll be affected to fix this problem. So we need to stop the injuries right away, and until then, but we need the permanent fix at some point. Now, there is an actual legal way on how to fix a safety problem. The first is, we're supposed to use engineering controls. These controls eliminate or reduce the hazards by use of permanent things. So let's say you have a spinning saw blade. What if I put a cover over it? We enclose the hazard. So can anyone put their hand on it? Nope. Then there is no hazard. No one can get hurt. How about we get a less hazardous chemical? A lot of times we're using something because we've always used it, but new stuff has been developed, does the job even better than the old stuff, and why aren't we using that? It's less hazardous. Maybe we get ventilation or filters to clean the air in a work area. Maybe we just get less hazardous equipment. There's still a hazard there, but it's less hazardous. That's better. Like a self-supporting item versus something carried by a worker. So, a concrete saw that's mounted on its own wheels and frame versus a hand-carried concrete saw. Well, one's much more likely to hurt somebody than the other. By the way, better equipment makes the job go faster, safer. It actually is more productive. So a lot of times we see the cost of the equipment as a hurdle, but we don't see the savings that equipment is going to bring us after we get it. What about anti-slip floor coatings? If you have an area that's normally wet and people keep slipping, well, we could give them better footwear. That is a fix, but people forget their shoes, right? So what if we just address the whole thing right off the top and make the floor something that can't be slipped on, or is less likely to be slipped on? So a permanent physical fix is really what we want. as a solution to the problem, because then the problem's gone or greatly reduced. Now, the fact of the matter, though, is that there isn't an engineering control for everything. You can't permanently get rid of all the hazards in the world. So the next thing we're allowed to try are administrative controls. And these are changes that do not remove the hazard, but make it safer by how people work around them. They give the people knowledge. So as an example, I have written safety policies and training, and that's so my staff knows how to do something and not get hurt. Without that, they'll find their own way that might be dangerous. Maybe we have increased supervision. We have an area with a fluid work staff that rotates in and out of different areas. We want more management around so we can give new guidance for these new workers as needed. Um, how about restricting access? Person has a key, they lock the door. Now no one can go into that electrical closet. No one should be going into that electrical closet. Um, Maybe we need new work procedures, new training. How about we put signage up? Um, we paint that top or the front edge of the step yellow because people keep tripping on it. The hazard's still there, but now they see it. Work scheduling that reduces the duration, frequency, or severity of the person's exposure. We don't want to have one person digging that ditch all day. Let's rotate that job throughout the staff, and that way no one gets so exhausted they're likely to make a big mistake. There's lots of administrative controls, and it just depends on what problem you're trying to solve. Now, the last thing we're allowed to try is personal protective equipment, abbreviated as PPE. And these are the wearable barriers that we wear as armor against hazards. So, safety goggles, side protection on your glasses, hearing protectors, environmental suits, aprons, gloves, face shields, hard hats, respirators, work boots, things that we wear as armor. Now, why is this the worst type of solution for a problem? PPE only works if they wear it. And flat out, some of the stuff isn't fun to wear. You put on a coverall that's all hot and sweaty on top of your normal work clothes. You're wearing double gloves. You're wearing a respirator, and now you can't see the work you're trying to do very well. PPE is not fun to wear. Sizing can be a real problem. You tell your employees to wear these latex gloves or nitrile gloves, but you only provide size medium. So now the people that have size small hands, well, their fingers are lost in these gloves, so they can't grab anything. And the people that have large hands, they're literally tearing the gloves apart as they try to put them on. So sizing can be a real issue, and that can affect whether people will wear something or not. Like I said, multiple layers. If you have to wear multiple layers of anything, it's going to be more restrictive, it's going to be hotter, and it makes the work more difficult. And people don't like doing things in a more difficult fashion. So this stuff can make the work harder. It's harder to move, grip, see things. So that's a problem. People don't want to use it. Also, another problem with PPE is they can leave it in their truck. They can leave it back at the shop. And then how often are people going to go turn around and go make a journey back to get the safety gear they need to wear while doing this job versus I'll just do the job and I'll be safe today. Yeah, like using a grinder and not using eye protection means you can just kind of close your eyes and no, that's going to get you hurt even worse. So lots of problems with PPE. That's why it's the worst solution to use. The problem is often we jump to PPE instead of thinking of an engineering control or an administrative control beforehand. So what would be an engineering control? Maybe something that has comfort grips built into the equipment and grip material built onto the equipment so gloves aren't as big a need. Maybe something that has an enclosed guard so we don't need the eye protection at all because there's nothing that can be thrown up into our face because there's a guard covering it. So PPE, it works, but it's never the best solution. Now, as you develop your action plan, one thing I just want to recommend is consult, consult, consult. Don't act on your own. Ask other people. Other viewpoints from other backgrounds can point out what we miss. They can point out safer and cheaper options we didn't even know about. And I've had this happen many times where I've written down a specification. This is what I want done. This is how I want it done. And someone comes back and says, did you think of this? And I go, nope. And that's because they've seen something in their work career that I haven't. So take advantage of all that work history. You know, make our jobs as easy as possible and make the work as good as possible. Talk to safety professionals, engineers, subject matter experts, and your staff. Your staff are the people actually doing the work, and a lot of times they're muttering under their breath all day, I wish I had a blank. And, you know, maybe that was the right answer. We just go get that for them. Now, after you do your accident investigation, you have an action plan, and you think it's all done, you need to follow up. Did it get implemented? Did it work? Does anything else need to be done after we did our fix? We find out that there's other issues. Ask your team members, ask the workers doing that task. Because quite frequently, you as a management member might say something and think it's just going to happen, and it doesn't happen. They didn't want to do it. They thought it would be a waste of time, so they don't do it. And more people now might get hurt because that work is still just as dangerous as what caused the accident in the first place. Um, so if you don't follow up, then your safety culture really may die because people are going to know that you're just paying lip service to things. You're not actually caring enough to check. So you follow up on these things, and the staff now start embracing the safety culture you're trying to create, like you do. And they realize that it's not just their safety, it's the safety of their team members, because we care about all of them. We need to express that in meetings. If you never bring up safety in a meeting, then your staff knows safety doesn't matter to you. You know, they know what you value based on how much time you spend on each thing. And if safety doesn't come up, um, then it's not going to be of value. So in conclusion, no one wants to have an accident, but it's likely to happen eventually. People make mistakes. When it does, investigate it so we can stop it from happening again. Remember the motto, everyone goes home every day.